Buying a used car and want to avoid surprises? Is this engine in good condition or not?
What am I looking for under here?
I'm inspecting a used car. Hola! I'm Mike, the backyard mechanic, and this is the Lexus. I'm going to be inspecting it like it's a used car I'm looking to buy. Well, looking as best as I can, considering I've lost 70% of my eyesight. I've decided to use my skills as an astrologist and combine them with my expert knowledge of astronomy that I learned from this book. Now I'm Mike, the backyard astronomer, and these are my binoculars, which I don't recommend using to look at an eclipse. I should get my eyesight back soon. I'm passing on the hard lessons learned from buying some real crappy cars. This includes the Ford Flex, Mazda 6, and the Acura TL. But believe me, I bought plenty of crap before that. I did a ton of research, watching dozens of videos and reading hundreds of articles. I've also consulted friends. The result is essentially an extensive checklist of things to look for. These rules apply to everything from a $500 junker to a $40,000 sports car. They don't completely apply to trucks and EVs, which will have different criteria. Cars older than 1996 will also have some differences because they don't have OBDII and will have different emissions controls. I'm going to inspect a $5,000 car. I'm choosing this price range because these will have the most problems. It's also what the Lexus is worth. Anyone can do this, but bringing a friend who is familiar with cars would help. If you find something wrong, it may or may not cost a lot of money, and a little experience could answer some questions. Besides, you don't want to meet a stranger alone in a Walmart parking lot. The first rule is to not trust the seller. You just have no idea what you're dealing with. If they are nice, great. Doesn't mean they don't want to pawn off their lemon of a jalopy.
Hey, how you doing, pal? I'll get you in a car real quick. Ain't no trick. My name is Chip, but you can call me Slick Rick. No frosted flake.
Second rule is to be ready to walk away. You can't be in a hurry to buy a cheap used car. Remember, when you're buying a used car, it's as is. This is a legal term that means a seller is not responsible for any defects or repairs. Another term is buyer beware. Questions that should be asked by phone or messaging before going to see the car include, has it ever been in an accident? If so, where and how severe? This changes the complexion of the inspection. I avoid cars with accident histories unless it's a hard-to-find car or a great price. Has it been repainted? This could be to hide an unreported accident. Have major maintenance items been completed, like the timing belt and transmission fluid change? Is it a clean title? More on that in a minute. Have all the recalls been completed? If not, why not, and how difficult are they? The Lexus had a recall for a melting dashboard. It took a year for the job to be completed. What kind of payment do they accept? More on that at the end. Before diving in, maybe you're still considering a professional inspection. A lot of articles will tell you to take a car to a mechanic before purchasing, but that's really hard to do. You have to coordinate an inspection time between the mechanic and the seller. You have to look at the car, then you have to take the car to the mechanic. You have to trust the mechanic, and you have to pay $100 to $200 for every inspection of every car. If the car you're looking at is an hour away from home, you have to use a mechanic you are unfamiliar with, using the eeny, meeny, miny, mo technique. You could decide you like a car and then schedule something the next day at a local mechanic or perhaps an online variation like the Lemon Squad here in Texas. You might get Tony D, Mel B, Robert V, or one of the other Spice Girls. Tony is certified in automatic transaxle manual drivetrain and axle electronic system Ford drivetrain master technician. What the hell? They need an Oxford comma in there somewhere. This service only seems to make sense if you're buying something somewhat expensive and out of state. Trust me, when you look at a $5,000 car on a Saturday, the seller is not going to want to wait until the next workday for a tech to come by. Well, he will, but he'll also sell the car in the meantime. I've had the car sold on me while I was driving to look at the car, multiple times. All that said, I've never paid for a mechanical inspection, but a friend of mine has done so several times. All of his cars were purchased within a short drive of his home, and he lived close to a mechanic. Sometimes the seller would let him drive the car there, sometimes they would meet him there, where they would complete the deal after the inspection. He benefited from a lot of convenience. The cars I look at tend to be over an hour away. Next, before inspecting the car, ask to see the title. A dealership, even a ragtag parking lot dealer, will always have a clean title by law. If it's a private seller, before even looking at the car, you should ask to see the title. If it's an out-of-state title, you need to do research on what a legitimate title looks like in that state. You need to understand the rules of transfer from that state to yours. There are many different titles. The only title you generally want is a clear or clean title. Anything else, you have to do research. This is a standard title and the one you want. These titles are legitimate, but you have to understand what they look like and be on guard for forgeries since they won't be familiar. These titles will get you a car at a huge markdown, but also at a much higher risk. You also need to ensure that your insurance will insure it. These titles indicate the seller is not the owner, and you should walk away. There are also electronic titles. I would personally not accept these. You need to know what a title looks like in your state. Here's one for Texas. If anything looks off, just walk away. You don't want to pay for a car only to find out you can't put your name on it or register it. I once bought a car in another state and the VIN on the title did not match the VIN on the car. It was discovered by the state trooper who pulled me over for speeding.
Don't you know you can't drive a piece of shit like that on the highway?
He impounded the car and I had to hire a lawyer to get it back. I have no idea how that lawyer got my car back. That trooper was really looking forward to selling my car at auction. When asking to see the title, this is a good time to ask how long they've owned it and why they're selling it. Someone who's owned the car for several years is ideal. They will tend to be the most honest about the car's issues. If they've owned the car for less than 6 months or worse, their name is not even on the title, this is a red flag. It's not a deal breaker, but at this point you have to assume that your seller is a flipper. A flipper is someone who buys something cheap, usually from an auction, and does the minimum amount of work to make the car sellable.
This car is a great deal. How do I sell it so cheap? I don't know how I stay in business.
There are legitimate flippers who do this for a living, but legally they should have a dealer license. Even guys who do it as a side hustle may be honest, but there are plenty who bend the rules and do things like roll the odometer back. I've looked at multiple cars that were supposedly under 100,000 miles and they looked like twice that. Use heavy car scents to mask smoking, pet smells, or mildew. Reset the check engine codes. It may take a few hundred miles before the check engine light comes back on. Remove the check engine light bulb. This happened in the Mazda 6 that didn't have a catalytic converter. Power wash away oil leaks. The Acura was thoroughly cleaned up. The manager got mad at his guys when I found a leak. Cover the engine compartment in Armor All to hide leaks. I looked at a Civic where the engine compartment was drenched. Top off the AC to hide a slow leak. That same Civic didn't have AC. The guy told me, "Oh, don't worry, I'll fill it up real quick." That's not how it works. Replace the tires to hide front end or alignment issues. Put stop leak in the radiator. This can ruin an engine. It's worse than the leak itself. Use thicker engine oil to stop or slow leaks. Use Lucas stop leak in the power steering and transmission. Even someone who has owned the car for years might do a few of these things. If you feel like you're dealing with a flipper, you have to inspect the car extra carefully. If they're going by a name that is not on the title, I would suggest asking for their ID to help keep them honest. If you're unsure of the situation, just walk away. If the title checks out, you can ask the seller a few more questions. Ask what is wrong with the car and if there's anything you should know. Anything you find that they don't state up front, you can use to negotiate the price. Ask if there are 2 keys. A spare key these days can be $300, and I hardly ever see a used car with 2 keys. That's a bargaining chip. Now is a good time to ask why they are selling the car, but odds are whatever they say is a lie. I generally say I bought another car and I don't need it anymore, but the best story I've heard was he bought the car for his sister and now she's in prison. That was the Mazda. Before looking at the car, you should have done your research into the specific model year of that car. Even Toyotas have good and bad years. Know the issues and what you're looking for. I'll talk more about that in the next video. Let's begin by inspecting the exterior. Take in a strong first impression before talking to the seller or examining it up close. Does this car look worth the money? Especially if you're looking at a sub $5,000 car, you're going to run into a lot of crap. I've seen a lot of cars that look way worse than the pictures, and I couldn't believe they thought it was worth that price. You need to start the inspection when the car is cold. You can't thoroughly inspect a hot car. The condition of the paint should match expectations for the price. Look for scratches, dents, and fading. Discolored or mismatched paint could indicate repairs. Misaligned panels, especially the hood and trunk, indicate shoddy repairs. Look for unexpected rust holes. Blistering paint is worse because the rust is hidden. Use a magnet on suspect areas to check for bodywork. Primary rust areas are the lower quarter panels, rocker panels, or underneath the doors. Open the trunk.
Yeah, don't worry about that. I got a guy who can take care of that.
Open the trunk. Check the trunk seal for overspray or if the paint in the trunk does not match the car. There should be no musky smell or dampness. While in the trunk, lift the covers. Check that there's a spare tire and jack. Check for rust under the spare tire where water accumulates. Lift and let go of each door, particularly the driver's door. If it feels loose, that's an indication of heavy use. If the shocks are good, the car should look level. Push down in each corner and make sure it just releases. It shouldn't bounce. Grab each wheel and pull and push on it, checking for clunks and looseness. Older tires will tell a story. New tires are a big expense. Check the wear bars for how much life is left. The front tires should be wearing evenly between the inside and outside. Otherwise, this indicates the need for a front-end alignment or repairs. Ensure the tire sizes are all exactly the same, at least the ones on opposite sides. If you have a tire gauge, check the air, especially in the front tires. Alignment issues can be hidden with uneven tire pressure. Now look underneath the car. You should be wearing old clothes or bring a mat. You'll need to crawl under the vehicle. Look from in front of the front tires and behind the back tires. In the front, look for any leaks. If the engine has been cleaned, look for telltale signs like oil splatter on the floorboard or frame. All the ball joints, tie rods, and CV joints should be free of grease, and the boots should not have any tears or cracks. Look for anything that looks out of place, bent or broken. I once discovered the washer reservoir was missing. Check that the frame is free from any obvious repairs. Ensure there's no leakage from the brake calipers or drums. From the back, check the exhaust. The rust should be minimal relative to the climate. Check the tailpipe with your finger. The soot should be dry and dark gray. If it's thick and wet and black, the car burns oil. Again, the engine should be cool. Look for any signs of leakage or spraying from oil or coolant. Check the hoses and belts are supple, like me, and not hard or cracked, also like me. Check the oil, which should be dark brown or black, but not gritty. If the oil is honey colored, it was just changed. Check the dipstick itself and look for signs of burnt oil or discoloration. Take off the oil cap and look inside the valve cover. Sometimes you can see the rockers and lifters and get a good idea of how clean they are. If there's any sludge, the engine has not been cared for. Look inside the cap for similar signs of sludge. If the oil has metal specks, looks gray, milky, or foamy, there is serious engine damage. Check the transmission dipstick if equipped. Transmission fluid should be reddish, not brown, and smell like oil with no burnt odor. The engine needs to be running to check the level. The power steering fluid and brake fluid should be filled to the proper levels. The plastic coolant reservoir should be filled to the proper level. Remove the metal coolant cap, sometimes on the radiator, sometimes on the engine, and sometimes there is only the plastic one on the reservoir. Check the cap for any silver or orange flakes, which indicates stop leak. Now we can finally get inside the car. First thing is to smell the interior. A musty, moldy, or mildewy smell could indicate water leaks. Cigarette smells may never come out. A powerful artificial deodorizer smell could indicate the seller is hiding something.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mess, but you know what? I bet you can find some good stuff in here.
The wear on the driver's seat, steering wheel, and pedals should match the mileage. You need to check that everything works, which is a pain in the ass, but you have to. Windows, locks, radio, power seats, mirrors, etc. They will try to slide some crappy things past you. Make sure it has mats. Mustang didn't notice, $75. Look for personal details. Mrs. Backyard Mechanic has to have a certain headrest.
Get yourself some seat covers and personalize it real nice.
Lift the mats and look for water. Something might be leaking. Check the headliner for stains or sags. The airbag should not be deployed. This sounds crazy, but I looked at a Honda Accord once where the driver's seat side bag was gone and there was a huge hole. With an assistant, check all the exterior lights, brights, turn signals, hazards, and backup lights. If you don't have someone to help you, you can place a phone behind the car to record the test. If you live in a warm climate and you're willing to do some advanced testing, I suggest getting an AC leak tester like this one from Amazon. With the car on and the AC running, stick the sensor in the middle vents to test the evaporator core. Then check in the engine compartment. Typical leakage areas are rubber hoses and crimps and the connections to the dryer, condenser, and the expansion valve. A good AC will be 40 degrees. Check the vents on the left to make sure they're as cold as on the right. Before talking about the test drive, my last video started slow but then took off. Then it died. Then it took off. Then the algorithm got tired of playing with me and stopped serving it altogether. How can you stop the bourgeoisie from keeping down the proletariat? Click that like button. It means rich and poor. Turn the ignition switch to the second position without starting the engine. All the warning lights, including the check engine and oil lights, should illuminate and go off when you start the engine. The Mazda had the check engine light bulb removed. The 2000 Solera did not have an oil light. Start the engine, get out of the car, and check if there's smoke coming out of the tailpipe. If it's cold out, it might be steam from condensation. If white smoke persists, this could be coolant and indicate a blown head gasket. Black smoke means the car is running too rich. Blue smoke is oil. It means the engine is worn out. Turn on the heater full blast to see how hot it gets and how quickly while driving. It should take 5 to 10 minutes. Too soon or too long indicates problems. The engine should idle smoothly on startup and after warm-up. If an automatic, shift back and forth between drive and reverse. Listen for any clunks in the drivetrain. Drive with the radio off, windows down so you can hear any suspension squeaks or clunks or engine ticks or knocks. When accelerating, the engine should not over-rev, which would indicate a weak torque converter. On braking, there should be no squeaks or grinding. From a medium speed, lightly press the brakes and feel for thumping from warped rotors. Let go or loosely hold the steering wheel when braking. It should not pull one way or the other. To test the front end alignment while cruising, let go of the steering wheel. The car should go straight. To test the front end components, you want to take some fairly quick turns, even a slalom. Ideally, find a driveway or a speed bump to turn over and listen and feel for problems. In a parking lot, do a circle in both directions, forward and reverse. The steering cranked all the way. If there's a clicking, the CV joints may be bad. The car should be taken on the highway so you can get up to 70 miles an hour. Different problems like shakes and shimmies show its speed. Hit the brakes at speed and make sure they don't thump. Test the cruise control. Roll up the windows and listen for wind noise from the window seals and the moonroof. Return the car, shut it off, check underneath for leaks. The AC might be dripping water, but it should not form a large puddle. Now's the time to run your OBDII scanner. I recommend this V-Peak with Bluetooth. It works with the OBD Fusion app, which is a free download. The port is somewhere under the dashboard, usually on the driver's side. Plug it in, turn the key to on with or without the engine running, and run the scan. Any codes you see mean the vehicle will need repairs. A P1000 means the codes were recently cleared and the seller is hiding something. If you're buying from a dealer, they should supply a free CarFax. If it's a private party, they might have one, which would be a really good sign that they are confident in the condition and the history of the car. Otherwise, you'll have to buy one yourself. If you're on a budget, I recommend the AutoCheck phone app. CarFax is better than AutoCheck, which can have gaps in the history, but it's half the price. Regardless of which you use, download the app at home and complete any registration. Pop in the VIN when you've decided you're serious about the car. The history report will tell you how many people have owned the car, all the service records, recalls, and accidents. It will tell you if the car is a clean title and give you recent odometer readings that you can use to ensure it hasn't been rolled back. The inspection is now complete. If you found anything major, you wouldn't buy the car, but chances are you found several minor things. You can use those items for negotiation. The general rules for negotiating are: be respectful of the buyer. Don't negotiate before seeing the car. That's tacky. Respect a firm price. Take it or leave it. You can still offer less after seeing the car, but it should be justified. Don't waste the seller's time and yours. Don't try and lower the price based on issues the seller previously disclosed. Car with big dent, $4,000. The car has a big dent. I'll give you $3,500. That just looks like you don't know what you're doing. Use Pawn Star rules. If you want the car for $500 less, offer them $1,000 less to leave room to negotiate. Have reasons for your negotiated price, like the issues you found or the Kelley Blue Book actual value doesn't match their asking price. Double the expected cost of any issues you found. You don't actually know the cost or the extent of the issues. Be ready to walk away. That last point is key, as I don't believe I've mentioned it yet. You always have to be ready to walk away. You can't be in a hurry to make a large purchase such as this. I like to think a few days before buying a pair of pants. If you appear desperate, the seller will have the upper hand. Hulk says this is bad. Everything has to feel right, but you also need to protect yourself from being manipulated. A slick seller will have an answer for every problem you find with the car.
Yeah, don't worry about that. That'll buff right out. Oh yeah, that? Yeah, we probably got a part for that out back. Don't even worry about it.
What is Slick Rick wearing? That's no cowboy hat. This is a cowboy hat.
Thanks, fan. It's important to not put yourself in the position to need a cheap car in a hurry. I know life happens, but if it does, you don't want to compound your life with a junker. But if a price is agreed upon, now's the time for payment. Unless your name is Guido and you travel with your entourage, you shouldn't be meeting a stranger with $15,000 in your pocket.
Johnny Knuckles sends his regards. He said to make it rain. And if you don't like the offer, he said to make it hail.
You also shouldn't be meeting the stranger alone. Even if it's someone not equipped to keep you from being robbed, they can call 911 from your car. If the car is $5,000 or less and your limit allows, you can pay using Zelle or Venmo, assuming the seller accepts one of those, which you should have agreed to on the phone. Even better, the person you're with can also Zelle the seller, doubling the limit to $10,000, and then you pay them back the next day when your limit resets. You could also get yourself a blank cashier's check, but this isn't much different than carrying cash, but you could get it for a sub-amount and make up the difference with Zelle. If the price is more than $10,000, you're restricted to making the purchase during banking hours and doing a wire transfer. If you're buying from a dealer, you have a few options. It was after hours when I bought the Mustang, so I put $5,000 on my credit card and the rest I took out a loan, which is time consuming, but it got me the car that night. I did make the mistake of listening to the salesman who told me I could wait 3 months to make my first payment. Hey, why not, right? Because it was charging me interest. That's why not. It cost me $500.
Tony 2 times said you needed to pay the VIG. You either pay the 5 large or you pay with 5 fingers. He also said you should cut your hair. You're starting to look like a Goomba.
Learn from my mistakes. Finally, make sure your insurance company covers a new car for a day or two until it's registered. Most do, but you should be sure. This methodology works. The cars I bought since then are the Toyota Matrix, Honda Solara, and the Mustang. Toyota and Honda are not the layups that they sound like. Hola! I'm Mike, the future mechanic. After editing this video, I had a few additional thoughts. First of all, a disclaimer. You can follow all of my advice to the letter and still end up with a problematic car. That's just the nature of buying a used car. It involves some risk. Second, only buy a car with problems you feel comfortable fixing, but remember, little problems can become big problems. Third, if you have access to a mechanic and can afford it, it's a good way to go. They'll generally do a better job because they have professional scanners, they have a lift to better inspect the undercarriage, and they have the experience of having seen hundreds of cars. Finally, watch out for too good to believe deals. I once went down a rabbit hole with a 5-year-old $1,000 Toyota Camry. The guy wanted money up front to ship it from Virginia. Yeah, right, buddy. There's lots of scammers out there. Now back to Mike, the previous mechanic. I know this was a lot of information to remember when buying a car. To make it easier, I've created a document that you can print out and take with you, or just refer to it on your phone. Link in the description. If I think of anything else, I'll add it to the document. But how about you? Did you think of anything I missed? If so, leave a comment. Except you, Jeff. I've told you multiple times to just walk away, but what does that sound like? You can just give them an excuse like, I have to get home from my favorite episode of Hannah Montana. Yes, dear? Sparky knocked up the neighbor's dog? Again? I'll be right home. I just remembered, my horoscope today said today's a bad day to buy a car. Or, hear me out, you could say, thanks, I'm not interested.
Hey, you're not walking away, are ya? You'll never get a great deal like this in your life. Give me $5. I'll hold it till Thursday.
Oh, I have a fan online. Hey, fan. Was this video helpful?
Yeah, I think I will just walk away.
Thanks, fan. What is the car worth that you're looking at? How do you decide what kind of car you should even consider? That's the next video. Anticipation. Making you wait. Hey, there's clouds in my coffee. I'm Mike, the backyard mechanic, and this is the Lexus. That's not the Lexus. He's pawing at my face.